Well, good afternoon, folks.
Good afternoon.
My name is Cyrus James Bingham. You can call me Cy or Sheriff. I've been the sheriff of Grant County for some time now, but I wasn't always sheriff. I was born in Big Beaver, Michigan, around 1870. Went all the way through second grade of my education. By the time I was 20 years old, I came out west. I went over to Asotin County, Washington, just up the way, not too far from here. Got a job as a ranch hand and learned the skills of a cowboy. I lived with my sister Minnie. She and her husband had already moved out here, so they had a place to stay. And it was during that time that I met Connie. It was love at first sight for both of us. Well, we got married not too long after that. And a few years later, a lot of gold strikes in this part of the country. So we hitched up our wagon and headed over into northern Idaho to see if we could get a job working for a mining company. Now, I'm a big fella, so I didn't quite fit in the mines, so I did get a job working for a mining company in a small town out there. Some years after that, probably around 1901 or 2, I got a letter from my brother Isaac. He was also out west, and he worked for a mining company, the Bohemia Mining Company out of Bohemia City. Now, that's not far out of Cottage Grove over in western Oregon. Now, my brother Isaac, he was quite the businessman and community leader. He built the first sawmill in Cottage Grove, and he went on to be a state legislature in both the House and State Senate. So Connie and I hitched up our wagon again, and we went down to Bohemia City. It was always a treat once in a while to head to Eugene and stay in a real hotel so Connie could get a real bath, hot bathtub. I worked as a stamp mill operator, crushing the ore. And then along about 1904, 1905, the government land office under the Department of Interior was hiring rangers for the newly formed Cascade Forest Reserve that President Teddy Roosevelt had created nationwide. I got one of those jobs, and so we lived up in the mountains. Now, my job was pretty much building trails, blazing trails. I'd blaze a tree, I'd carve my name and the date on there. Some nice folks went in afterwards and took pictures. I'd invite you to look at them later. Now, my patrol area extended from the Three Sisters to Crater Lake. Pay was $65 a month. I had to provide my own saddle and pack horses. Connie joined me. I built a few cabins up there that she stayed at when I was on patrol. Some of my other jobs was had the authority to sell little lots of timber to the mining companies, and I administered some grazing permits. Me and my fellow rangers heard of stories of the range wars out here in eastern Oregon at the time, and we were concerned that they were going to go farther west, but they never did. We were always able to find grazing for both cattle and sheep and help build trails for the sheepmen to take their sheep to market. About once a month, we try to make it down into Bend to get supplies or visit a post office. And in the winters, we'd spend at the ranger stations in either Oak Ridge or Mackenzie Bridge. And of course, my other main job was fighting fire. After a lightning storm, we'd have to look for smokes and get on our horse and go find them and put them out. I didn't care too much for that, though. In 1905, the U.S. Forest Service was created. So the Cascade Forest Reserve became the Cascade National Forest. Now I still remained a ranger, although my pay was now $75 a month. Connie and I was able to put a little bit away because we were able to live off the land, so we had to save some money. We got different badges. I was always concerned that those shiny badges that the government land office gave us would be a target for somebody. Fortunately, that never happened. The Forest Service badges were made of brass or bronze, and so they were a little harder to see. So we continued our life up there in the mountains. She'd go out and collect huckleberries, and I'd go fishing, some hunting, and then back out on patrol. Later, the Cascade National Forest got split up and became the Willamette and the Deschutes and the Umpqua National Forest. And of course, the Crater Lake Forest Reserve became Crater Lake National Park. In 1907, I was offered the opportunity to become the first forest supervisor of the Blue Mountain East National Forest. It was part of the Blue Mountain Forest Reserve, and when they became national forests, they split them up into two separate pieces, east and west. So Connie and I hitched up our wagon, came to John Day. Now, my first task when I got over here, was told by my supervisor, was to stop the Grant County Range War. And I thought, well, it might be a tough task, but I gave it a try. So I got the sheepmen and the cattlemen together one day. I drew a line in the dirt and I said, cattlemen over here, sheepmen over there. And I says, as long as you stay there and you stay there, everything will be fine. The shooting's going to stop. And I says, if I have to come shooting, I don't shoot for pleasure. So into the Grant County Range War. Well, the Blue Mountain East National Forest soon became the Malheur National Forest. And by then I had a small staff of rangers to go out into the various newly created ranger districts. Job's pretty much the same as we had over in the west side. A few timber sales, a lot of grazing permits. And along 1920 I wanted something different. So I resigned from the Forest Service. Threw my hat in the ring for running for sheriff. I was elected. Been doing it ever since. But you know, it was the 1920s. Prohibition. So I had to go out and find some stills and bust them up. There's a picture of me right there. The one we found over by Prairie City. And I know some of you folks are thinking, I know one or two sites up Canyon Creek. That's what you're thinking. Well, I know about them too, so I best not find anybody up there. Here we have a little real moonshine that I got my hands on at that Prairie City site. Every once in a while, the federal government come in, the revenuers. Well, I'd always made sure there was pieces and parts of broken stills for them to see. And I'd be satisfied and they'd be on their way. Now, you may hear talk around town that I actually support the moonshiner business. Well, I will neither confirm nor deny. I wonder if a lot of my friends may be involved in that business. Not sure. During my time so far, me and my 25 deputies investigated 4 murders. And we've had 2 jailbreaks. A couple of fellas one time, they had their eating utensils, knives and forks, and they somehow cut out a cinder block in the cell and they got out. Well, I got word of a cabin up in McClellan Creek that someone saw smoke come out of the chimney. So that night I got a couple of my deputies and we drove up the road a ways, but we walked into the cabin. It was about 8:30 at night. And I hollered in there and said, "You fellas, you best come out and give up." And they did. They didn't raise a fuss. One of them had been arrested for acquiring a horse without permission. The other fellow wrote a bad check for $5. The other jailbreak, can't believe this guy. He somehow finds a small hole in a cell and crawls through it. Now it's the dead of winter and it's snowing outside. So the next morning, the deputies and I come in, we're getting ready to go looking for him. And there he is in the cell hollering for his breakfast. I guess spending out in the night of snow wasn't very fun. He decided he better crawl back in. Well, I'm getting on in years. I've got this condition in my leg, and the doctors think it might be related to blood poisoning, and I'm getting a little arthritis, so I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be doing the sheriff. Connie's been wanting me to retire and wants to move down to Southern California where our daughter lives, so we may do that. So well, getting on time to head on home. Connie was wanting to have an early supper. I live just a couple blocks away over here. If you feel free to come over sometime, and she's got some huckleberry preserves that she'd love to share with you. So I certainly appreciate you folks for stopping by. So, but sir, in the back, excuse me. Have we met?
I don't think so.
You sure?
I don't know
Well,
what to say.
I'm gonna have to swing by the office on the way back and check my wanted posters. Well, folks, you enjoy the festivities and the rest of your afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good.